Start recording. Okay, so you have your notes up and running, hopefully now, and we're going to go through the notes from yesterday after watching the video and reading that PDF file. It shouldn't have been too hard to fill in most of those questions, so we want to go through those so that you have the correct definitions and the most detailed answers for your notes so that they're fully complete and you have something that'll be very helpful for you to use on tomorrow's quiz. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here to the first part, which is the vocabulary. All right, so our vocabulary terms, we defined in the video and we defined in our reading the definition of cells. The definition that you're expected to know is that the cell is the basic unit that makes up all living things. Okay, and just to elaborate on that, the cells make up every single living thing that exists, from single-celled organisms like bacteria to organisms like humans that have billions of cells that all specialize in various tasks to keep the organism alive. But the cell is the basic unit of all living things. The next vocabulary term is stimulus. A stimulus is something that causes a change in part of or a change to the entire organism. In the video I went through and I showed you some stimuli that causes change in the animals as well as plants. When you think about yourself, a stimulus can cause a change in you, like, for example, when you get cold, to maintain your body temperature at 98.6 degrees, your body will start to react to that change of feeling cold by starting to shiver and getting goosebumps and stuff like that to try to maintain your body heat. Also, when you get too hot, like today it's supposed to be nice and warm outside. If you go outside and you're running around, you get hot, you're probably going to start sweating a little bit as your body tries to cool you down a little bit. So stimulus is something that causes a change. So body heat can be stimulated by the environment, and then your body will change accordingly. Homeostasis is that word that means that you need to have the ability to maintain a stable internal state in a changing external environment. So body temperature is one of those things. And I don't remember if it was in the reading or not, but a good example of that is blood sugar. If your body is low, or your blood sugar is low, you start to get nerve stimulation, usually in the form of feeling hungry. Your stomach starts to growl, your brain gets the sensation of hunger. And then as you eat, your blood sugar level rises again, and it'll eventually get to a point where it starts to get high. At that point, your body will sense that high blood sugar, and it will stimulate organs in your body, namely the pancreas, to produce hormones like insulin, which go to work lowering that blood sugar back to a normal level. And if your body is functioning properly, it maintains a stable blood sugar level that doesn't get too low and it doesn't get too high, and your body and your cells are able to function efficiently the way they're supposed to. That's just one of those examples of homeostasis. Okay, the last vocabulary word is metabolism. Metabolism is the sum total of all chemical activities performed by an organism. So everything your body does that uses energy is part of your metabolism. So getting up out of bed and going to the bathroom and taking your shower and getting dressed all took energy because you have to move your body around. And your body takes sugar or takes energy and feeds that to the cells so that you could do those activities. The more active you are, the more efficient your metabolism becomes. And that's pretty much true of every organism. Now, sometimes metabolisms are misleading because at certain stages in your life, your metabolism is going to be very high because your body is doing a lot of activities. Right now, at your age, your body is growing rapidly. You're getting taller. You're growing up from a kid's body into your adult body, and there's a lot of physical changes that are going to be happening to you over the next several years, and that ramps up your metabolism, which is why a lot of times teenagers are constantly eating and taking in food and energy that way, and next thing you know, they're not gaining any weight. They're just burning off all those calories because their metabolism is so high. And then when they get to be adults and their growth stops, if they don't change some of their eating habits, sometimes adults get too much energy, and next thing you know, they start putting on weight. So our metabolism slows down at other times in our lives. So we need to make sure that we're feeding our bodies properly so our metabolism remains balanced with our intake. So those are the four vocabulary words you're going to need to know for tomorrow's quiz. Make sure that you have the correct definitions for that. Okay? Now, moving on now to the key ideas. The first question here, it said, explain the difference between the two types of reproduction, asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Okay? Sexual reproduction is when you need a male and a female member of a species to breed and provide half of the genetic material needed to form a complete new organism or an offspring. These new offspring are going to have characteristics that are similar to the parents, but they're not identical. In the video, I showed you the baby chickens that were crossbred with two different types of chickens. They look very different from each of their parents, and until they turn into an adult, I won't know exactly what they're going to look like, but they had characteristics of both. They had some of the same feather patterns, and like, for example, they all had feathers on their legs and feet, if you remember from the video. They got that from the rooster, or that particular trait from the rooster, and some of the other coloring patterns are going to come from the hens that the rooster mated with. So those characteristics get passed on from parent to offspring, and that's only due to sexual reproduction. The nice thing about that is that when you have male and female members that are blending genetic material, you get a lot of variety. And that's why, outside of identical twins, really no two human beings really look exactly the same. We might have very similar characteristics, but we don't have identical characteristics. So that's something that makes for quite a unique combination of life on the planet, is the cross sharing of traits between parents and offspring. The second type of reproduction is asexual reproduction. In this type, there's only one type or one organism needed to create an offspring. Those offspring are genetically identical to the parent, meaning that they are basically clones of the parents. They're identical. There are several organisms that have the ability to do this. In the video, I talked about certain types of plants like potatoes. When you keep a potato back and you plant it back into the ground to grow a new plant, that plant is identical to the original plant that potato came from in a genetic sense. And so all the potatoes are going to come out the same. You're not going to get a white-skinned potato and a red-skinned potato from a white-skinned potato plant. It's just not going to work that way. They're going to be always the same as the parent. There are certain animals that have the ability to do this. Like, for example, a starfish. If you took a starfish and you actually cut it in half, it would regrow the missing body parts for each half, and you would end up with two starfish that are identical to each other. And that would be a form of asexual reproduction. So the big thing about asexual is that it does not require male and female breeding. Asexual can happen to an individual organism. Okay? Now, let's go on into the 6 characteristics of living things. I know during the video I kind of jumped around on this, but I kind of put them in a little bit more structured order for our notes. If yours aren't in the same order, that's okay. Just make sure you have the right characteristics, okay? All right, so the 6 characteristics. First thing and foremost is that all living things are made of cells. Some organisms are single-celled, others are multi-celled or multicellular. It can be made of, if you're multicellular, you can have trillions of cells. As you think about it, the bigger the organism, the more cells they're going to have. So an elephant's going to have a lot more cells than, say, a human being. Second characteristic of living things. All living things sense and respond to changes in their environment. They react to stimuli. A stimuli can be internal, like in the case of blood sugar, or they can be external to the organism. So environmental temperature, increased sunlight, there's all sorts of different things that happen to our external environment that can cause us to change accordingly. Excuse me, sneeze. Third characteristic, living things have the ability to reproduce. This can happen either through sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction. Some organisms have the ability to reproduce through both methods. So, for example, a strawberry plant actually has the ability to create blossoms which get pollinated. And this is a form of sexual reproduction because the pollen goes from flower to flower and fertilizes those flowers to create fruit, which will contain seeds. Those seeds then can become new strawberry plants, and you can have different plants that share genetic material with each other that way. But strawberries also have the ability to go from a single plant to send out what are called runners, which are basically long stems that eventually take root away from the original plant. And so therefore you have 2 plants that are identical to each other. So strawberries can reproduce in both methods, depending on if it's a runner or if it's sprouting from seed. Living things all contain DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a big word, so we use DNA for short. This is the genetic information that instructs every single cell of living things as to their function and form. So the job that the cell does as well as the shape that the cell takes. So in single-celled organisms like bacteria, all the cells are pretty much identical. Every type of bacteria looks the same as every other type of bacteria of a particular type. Like, for example, E. coli bacteria, they all look the same. But when you have multi-celled organisms, DNA controls what the cell's job is in that organism. So in humans, a skin cell is going to have a totally different job than, say, a nerve cell or a muscle cell. And because they have different jobs, they have different forms. They look different because they have to take a different shape to do their job. So the DNA is what instructs those cells to form in a particular way. 5 here, living things all use energy. Some organisms have the ability to use and store energy directly from the sun. We call those autotrophs or autotrophs. Autotrophs means that they can simply make energy from the sun through usually photosynthesis. Others must consume energy by eating other organisms. That's what we are. We are heterotrophs. We have to eat plants and animals to get the energy we need to survive, along with many other species. The chemical processes that release and use energy in our bodies are commonly referred to as our metabolism of the organism. Okay. And the last thing here, number 6, living things grow and develop. Organisms do not necessarily stay the same their entire life cycle. For example, humans grow and develop their entire lifetime. Growth can also be related to repairing damage to an organism due to injury. So if you were to break a bone, your bone will heal because your cells have the ability to grow and develop and repair damage due to an injury. But at the same time, that happens throughout your life. when you're an infant, you're born, if you've ever been around a brand new newborn baby, they're very different than what a middle school student looks like. Not just in size, but in complete function or form as well. Some babies are completely bald, where most middle schoolers are not. They're a lot bigger when you're a middle schooler. The brain has developed dramatically over the course of 13, 14 years, so that you're not just sitting there drooling on a pacifier or on a baby bottle, but now you can actually have conversations with other people and complex thought that babies just aren't quite ready for yet. So, and that continues all the way through your life. So organisms grow and change their entire life cycle. The only time you don't grow and change is after you die. Okay. All right. The last two things were critical thinking questions, something to get you to start applying this knowledge in a different way. So what are some examples for stimuli in your environment? I gave some. You may have some totally different ones. So I'm going to read through the ones I have, and then I'll have you maybe unmute your mic and give me one or two that you had on your list if I didn't say the same one. Okay. So one example of a stimuli to our environment, our eyes will dilate or constrict due to light levels in our environment. If it's dark, our eyes dilate and the pupils get larger to allow more light in so we can see better. Same thing happens when we go outside and it's really bright. They constrict because that bright light irritates our eyes. If we get cold, we begin to shiver. If we get hot, we sweat. Those are reactions to stimuli. A sudden sound can cause an increase in our pulse rate and overall awareness of our surroundings. We hear a loud noise, we think it could be a potential threat, and our body automatically reacts to it. We can't control that. Blood sugar, glucose levels, like I talked about before, can raise or fall with the release of insulin hormones to help regulate the level in our body to maintain our health. And if we get sick, as we fight an infection, a lot of times we develop a fever. In addition to that, our body automatically creates chemicals called antibodies to fight that disease, as well as additional white blood cells to fight that disease. Okay, and before I go on to the next question, did you have any stimuli that I didn't list? Feel free to unmute and read what you had on yours. Okay, since nobody's talking, I'm going to assume that you either had the same ones or you didn't have any. All right, the last one is, what does a fur coat of a bear have to do with homeostasis? All right, the fur coat of bears and other mammals help to protect the animal from exposure to the environment. It helps it to maintain a normal body temperature. You could also say that the fur coat can protect it from things like rain and snow to help maintain that temperature, because if the rain or snow got to the skin, that would help, or that would cause the animal to cool off and body temperature to drop, which could be a bad thing. So basically the idea of a fur coat on bears and other animals is it helps them stay warm. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording because these are the notes that we needed for today. But in addition to turning in the notes here after our meeting, there is another task for you to complete, and I'll go through that now for you. Okay. First thing is, when you go to turn in your notes, there is an additional video I would like you to watch. This one's much shorter than mine. It's an Amoeba Sisters video. It's just a nice little review and recap that you need to watch just to kind of help study for tomorrow's quiz. All right, and that's going to be on Canvas modules as well. So in addition to turning in your notes, you need to watch this video. I think it's only like about 9 minutes long, so it's not too bad of a review, and you'll be done. No additional work for today. Just turn in your notes to Canvas and watch the video, and then be ready for tomorrow's quiz. Okay? Let's